Hey guys, tonight we're slipping into the rough wool robes and callous sandals of a medieval monk. You step through the heavy oak doors of the cloister, trading the bright chatter of the outside world for a life of endless ritual, prayer, and silence. The air inside smells faintly of damp stone and candle wax, while the walls seem to hum with echoes of generations before you, men who chose or were forced to live by the rule, obeying in lockstep and speaking as little as possible. And yes, you probably won't survive this. The strict discipline, the brutal schedules, and the terrifyingly quiet halls would drive most of us to sneak right back out before nightfall. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And I'd love to know where you're listening from, and what time it is for you right now. So pop that in the comments if you'd like. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hymn, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stand at the threshold of the monastery, boots caked in the mud of the road you've just traveled. The gatehouse monk eyes you warily, as if weighing your soul on the spot. He asks your name, though it barely matters. Once you pass into these walls, your name will be buried under layers of obedience. It's not so much an identity here as a placeholder. You will belong to the monastery, and the monastery will own you in return. Passing under the stone archway, you feel the sun vanish behind you, replaced by the cool, echoing gloom of the cloister. Your ears catch the soft hush of distant chanting, a reminder of what will become your constant soundtrack. You shift your pack nervously, glancing at the other monks moving about in silence, their faces blank as uncarved wood. You wonder if you'll soon learn that same blankness as you trade the chaos of outside life for a world of carefully measured steps. A novice greets you, signaling you to leave your pack on a worn wooden bench. He gestures for you to follow, leading you through a maze of passageways, narrow, low-roofed, the kind that funnel drafts straight through your bones. You are to meet the abbot, the iron-fisted figure who rules this place. Historians still argue whether medieval abbots were genuinely holy or simply brilliant administrators with a dash of tyranny. You suspect you're about to find out firsthand. You pass through a cloister walk, the open arcade on one side framing a tidy square of grass. This will be your only glimpse of sky for hours each day, since much of your time will be spent in the refectory, the scriptorium, or the dim chapel. The air is so quiet you can hear your own breath, and your heart seems to pound too loud for such a place. Finally, the novice brings you to the abbot's chamber. It is austere, nothing on the walls except a crucifix and a single battered chair. The abbot sits with a ledger open, quill poised like a spear. He studies you, eyes narrowed, as if to peel away every lie you might tell. After a long silence, he asks your purpose. You stammer out a reply, something about wanting a life of piety. He nods, but you see no real kindness there, only the flicker of satisfaction. One more soul to mold, one more body to keep the monastery running. He assigns you a place among the novices, explaining the daily routine, the pre-dawn bells, the endless offices of prayer, the times for work, for meager meals, for brief rest. You are told to abandon any notion of personal ownership. Even your shoes are no longer truly yours. They belong to God now, just like your body, and inconveniently your thoughts. You swallow hard when the abbot mentions the vow of silence. It is a challenge you've never imagined, to keep your tongue still except for ritual prayers. No idle jokes, no personal stories, no silly arguments about whose mother makes the best broth. Nothing, just prayers, chanted in chorus, and silence otherwise. If you do need to communicate, you will learn the monastery's sign language. a patchwork of gestures for passing bread, asking permission to speak, or pointing to the latrine. Over the centuries, monks refined these signals so thoroughly you could practically discuss the weather without ever opening your mouth. You start to feel the weight of your decision. As he continues, you will rise in the dark, before the rooster even thinks of crowing, to chant psalms in a language you barely know. You will stand shoulder to shoulder with men whose feet reek of a lifetime of wool socks, breathing in the scent of unwashed robes and candle smoke. And you will do this day after day, month after month, year after year, until the line between waking and praying blurs into something almost dreamlike. A small part of you rebels. Surely there must be some conversation, some laughter aloud. The abbot fixes you with a look, as if reading your thoughts, and reminds you that worldly chatter is a path to temptation. Best keep the mind clear, and the tongue still. You nod, swallowing your doubt. By the time you're shown to your sleeping place, a narrow wooden cot in a cold communal dormitory, you're already wondering if you've made a mistake. The stone walls seem to breathe out a chill that seeps through your bones. One of the older novices points out the chamber pot in the corner, since you are not allowed to leave the dorm after curfew, and with a grin so tiny it's nearly invisible. He warns you about Brother Gerard, who snores so mightily you'll think the roof beams are cracking. You unpack your single spare robe and your prayer book, then lie down, staring at the beams above. A long day is ahead, and after that, a lifetime. You have given yourself to the cloister, and the cloister will keep you. Your first night passes in a haze of anxious half-sleep, punctuated by the creaking of boards, a chorus of snores, and the occasional rustle of a restless monk. When the first bell tolls, so early it feels like you've barely closed your eyes, you swing your legs out of bed, shivering. The vow of silence is about to begin in earnest, and you wonder, not for the last time, how a human heart can bear so many words left unspoken. You wake before first light, though you aren't sure you ever truly slept. The monastery's communal dormitory is cold and echoing, every cough or creak of the floorboards amplified in the vast stone hall. Your breath steams faintly in the darkness as you sit up on your narrow wooden cot, heart pounding at the thought of the day ahead. Your second day in the cloister, though it feels as if you've been here forever already, will bring you one of the most unsettling of monastic rites: the shaving of your tonsure. You join the other novices who stir and shuffle through the aisles between beds, silent, their faces still puffy with sleep. No one speaks, of course. The vow of silence has been explained and enforced from the moment you arrived. But your mind chatters on, relentless, chasing worries and half-formed regrets. Would it have been better to stay on your father's farm, to marry, to wander the roads freely, even if that meant hunger and risk? Here you are, stuck with men you barely know, forced to carve away every shred of your old life. The novice master signals with a small hand gesture, time to go, and you file through a stone archway into a side room dimly lit by beeswax candles. The scent of the wax mingles with the earthy tang of straw laid on the floor to catch stray hairs. There, standing like a hawk watching prey, waits Brother Anselm with his razor. You swallow hard. The tonsure. There is no mirror, of course. There is no vanity. You kneel on a small wooden block as Brother Anselm circles you. With practiced hands, he lifts a ragged cloth away from your shoulders and places it in your lap. Then the scraping begins. A slow, methodical ring cut away from the top of your scalp, leaving a bald crown fringed by a halo of hair. Each stroke feels cold and humiliating. You feel the dull tug of hair roots, the sting of a fresh scratch, and you fight the impulse to flinch. The tonsure, you have been told, is a symbol of humility, of leaving worldly pride behind. Historians still debate whether the practice originated purely as a monastic tradition, or whether it was inspired by earlier Roman slave customs, marking those who had no freedom of their own. Another theory says it imitated the supposed crown of thorns worn by Christ, reminding you of daily sacrifice. Whichever the reason, there's no doubt that once the tonsure is shaved, you belong here, or nowhere at all. As the hair falls in gentle tufts to the straw, you suddenly remember your mother brushing your curls when you were small. It makes your throat ache with homesickness. You wonder if she would even recognize you now, raw and reshaped by the rule. When the shaving is done, Brother Anselm wipes the blade, gestures for you to stand, and silently leads you to a polished copper plate nailed to the wall. You catch your first glimpse of yourself. The circle of bare scalp glows like pale parchment. You look strange, otherworldly, less a man, more a creature, half transformed into a holy thing. Your scalp feels icy in the monastery's draft. Older monks sometimes tease through silent signs that a tonsure is like a window for the Holy Spirit, or a window for the cold. No one warns you how much that bald patch will burn in summer and freeze in winter. Still, you bow, accepting this sign of membership. You have crossed a threshold. There is no time to dwell. Brother Anselm signals again, and you follow him into the cloister walk, a corridor lined with columns, where morning light begins to trickle through. Birds outside greet the dawn in cheerful voices you are not allowed to join. You long to speak, to shout, to laugh at your ridiculous new haircut. But silence rules here like an invisible master. The path leads you into the chapel where the morning office is beginning. Psalms drone through the cold air. Men chanting with flat voices, half asleep. You slot into place beside another novice, who gives you the smallest of nods, a silent welcome to the freshly shaved. The prayers feel endless. Your scalp prickles and throbs with every movement of your bowed head. You struggle to follow the Latin, tripping over phrases, your tongue clumsy, your stomach empty. But you press on, because that is what a monk does, endures, repeats, obeys. When the office ends, you march in silent procession to the refectory. Meals in the monastery are another test of the vow of silence. There is no chatter over breakfast, no cheerful greeting, no comment about how thin the gruel seems today. Instead, you take your wooden bowl, nod politely to the monks serving the portion, and sit at a long table lined with other shorn heads. You eat slowly, eyes down. The only sounds are spoons, scraping, and the faint wet noises of swallowing. One brother reads scripture aloud while you eat, his voice echoing between the walls in a rhythmic drone meant to drown out even your hunger. You try to focus on the words, but your thoughts drift again. The pain on your scalp, the strange sense of being naked without hair, the fear of what lies ahead. The tonsure is a small thing, perhaps, compared to all you have given up, but it feels enormous. As the minutes pass, you realize it is not just a mark on your body. It is a symbol of every freedom you have surrendered. No chance to hide behind your hair, no way to appear fashionable, no chance to be seen as anything but a monk. Later that afternoon, you are sent to work in the scriptorium, where you will practice copying letters. Your tonsure tingles whenever the chill wind sneaks through the window slits, distracting you from the page. Bent over a rough plank desk, you dip a thin quill into brownish ink and carefully trace a passage from a psalm. The parchment smells of old hide, the ink slightly sour. Your fingers ache from the awkward angle, and you cannot help but think how different it feels to shape words for others, rather than speak them aloud for yourself. Around you, the other scribes work in perfect silence, the only sounds the scratching of quills and the occasional sneeze. It is a rhythm all its own, a hush so powerful that even the faint flutter of your sleeve is startling. You wonder if you will ever get used to this. The quiet, the stillness, the endless hours spent bent over a page. Sometimes in the scriptorium, a brother will pass behind you and check your lettering, pointing with one finger if you slip. There is no scolding out loud, only a stern look. You fix the error and move on. Heart thudding. There is little room for pride here, and even less for mistakes. As the day drags on, your scalp grows tender from the raw air, the quill nicks your knuckle, and your stomach growls once more. You pause, trying to recall why you came here in the first place. Was it faith? Fear of the outside world? A wish to belong somewhere? Or simply an accident of being the youngest son with no inheritance? Whatever the reason, there is no turning back now. The tonsure brands you in every sense. When evening prayers come, you march back into the chapel, shoulders hunched from the day's labors. The candles gutter low, their wax puddling like teardrops on the altar. You kneel, once more repeating the psalms. Outside, the world continues, as always. People laugh in taverns, shout in marketplaces, sing songs around hearth fires. Here, you bow your head, bald patch gleaming in the candlelight, and give over your last words to God, hoping He hears them better than you ever could. You rise in the dim light of early dawn, the tonsure on your head, tingling from the night's chill. Your second full day, though it could be the 100th. Time here seems to fold in on itself, measured only by bells and psalms. You feel the strangeness of the silence wrap itself around you again, heavier even than your rough wool robe. Today, the vow of silence truly begins. Yesterday, you were allowed a few hesitant questions, a word here or there from your novice master, but no more. From now on, you will speak only in ritual chant. Every other word is forbidden. It is a silence that seems to reach into your bones, colonizing even your thoughts, leaving you to wonder how long a person can stand being left alone with their own mind. You shuffle into the cloister, walk with the others, the stone underfoot still cold from the night. The dawn is a pale stripe on the horizon, and birds are just beginning to sing, a mocking chorus, really, given you cannot. The breeze curls in through the archways, carrying a whiff of cooking fires from the kitchen yard. Your stomach growls, but you do not mention it. You cannot. Some historians say the vow of silence was about discipline, a way to keep men from stirring up trouble with idle gossip. Others believe it trained the mind to listen more deeply for God's voice, like still water reflecting the sky. Still others argue it was simply practical. A monastery crammed with 100 men working, eating, sleeping in close quarters would descend into chaos if everyone could chatter freely. In any case, you quickly learn that silence is not peaceful. It is demanding, punishing, a test every hour. At breakfast, you line up for your wooden bowl of watery pottage, eyes down, breathing in the steam with a faint sense of gratitude. Conversation is strictly off limits. There was a mivandispi. Instead, a brother stands at a raised pulpit, reading scripture in a steady drone, while the rest of you spoon mush into your mouths. The text rolls over you, like water over stones, barely catching, barely soaking in. Your mind drifts to memories of noisy mealtimes at home, your sister teasing, your father cursing the price of barley, the way a neighbor's rooster would wander into the kitchen. Here, the only rooster is the one the reader mentions in Peter Sip's Denial. A novice tries to pass you the bread basket, but your elbow bumps his, nearly toppling it, a clumsy gesture, made worse because you cannot say sorry. You manage a quick nod, and he shrugs, forgiving you in silence. Then he raises 2 fingers, a simple sign that means finished, And you nod again. There is an entire silent language woven into monastic life. You will learn to ask for more water by making a twisting motion of your hand, to ask to leave the table by tapping your chest, to request a tool by miming its use. These gestures are as refined as any spoken dialect, but they feel unnatural at first. Your hands fumbling in place of your voice. A small slip, the wrong sign, can be misunderstood, sometimes to hilarious results. One monk once asked for a comb, but accidentally signed codfish, earning a week's worth of confused looks and a quiet chuckle from the older brothers. Humor lives here, but in small subtle ways, like moss growing between stones. Later in the day, after the midday prayers, you are assigned to help in the gardens. The cloister garden is a patch of green walled off from the wider world, filled with herbs and beans and a few tired apple trees. Here, silence feels gentler. You push your hands into the cool soil, the smell of damp earth rising up like a blessing. The wind rustles the leaves, and you realize it is the only voice you will hear freely today. Digging and planting are easier on the mind than chanting. You feel something close to relief with every weed you pull, every stone you clear. The older gardener, a brother with a missing tooth and kind eyes, shows you which herbs to harvest. He makes the sign for thyme and sage, tracing their shapes with his calloused fingers. You try to imitate him, and he pats your shoulder in approval. It is perhaps the only praise you will earn today, and it is enough. Hours pass. The sun climbs high, baking your bare tonsure until your scalp feels tender again. You pause under the shade of a pear tree, blinking up at the bright blue sky, wondering if the world beyond these walls notices you are gone. Somewhere out there, merchants are shouting prices, minstrels are singing for pennies, mothers are calling children home for bread. Here, the only voices belong to prayers and the silent language of the hands. As dusk gathers, you return to the cloister walk, sore and dirty. The bell tolls for vespers, and you file in with the others, the same routine, the same hypnotic chants. Your throat feels raw from the chanting, even though you speak no other words. Each note vibrates in your chest, like a heartbeat echoing through a hollow room. You kneel once more, candlelight flickering against stone, and let the silence settle over you like a heavy blanket. This, you realize, is your world now. A place where thoughts echo, where voices sleep, where words live only in the liturgy. You wonder, not for the last time, how long a man can survive in such quiet, and what happens if someday your own voice refuses to return when you call it. The bell tolls before the world even dreams of dawn, a solemn clang rolling through the cloister like a summons you cannot escape. You flinch beneath your thin woolen blanket, bones stiff from the chill that never quite leaves the stone dormitory. There is no pause, no hesitation, routine rules everything here. You push yourself upright, tonsure still prickling from the recent shave, and rub the sleep from your eyes as you listen to the other novices stirring around you. Today is another day of prayers, another day of wordless meals, another day when the vow of silence wraps around your throat like a phantom hand. But first comes matins, the pre-dawn office. A rite so early, it feels less like beginning a day and more like refusing to end the night. You rise with the rest, shoulders brushing in the darkness. All of you trudging toward the chapel in practice, almost mechanical, obedience. Historians still argue whether these brutally early rituals existed to break the monks' wills or to sanctify every moment of their waking life. Some claim it trained the body to serve without protest. Others say it was a path to a mystical half-sleep where true visions could emerge. All you know is that it feels like a trial by exhaustion as you cross the cloister walk. The only sound is the slap of sandals on cold flagstones. The sky overhead is a smear of ink, stars fading behind a curtain of approaching dawn. You step inside the chapel, instantly struck by the heavy scent of candle wax and damp stone. A few dim lamps gutter weakly on iron brackets, casting shadows that seem to move with minds of their own. You kneel. The stone bites into your knees, a harsh reminder that your body is not your own anymore. The chanting begins, low and steady, a river of Latin syllables flowing over you. You join in, voice cracked from disuse, your breath clouding in the cold air. There is something strangely comforting about that rhythm, though. It binds you to these men, even if you cannot share a laugh or a story with them. Hours blur together here. You learn to measure them not by clocks, but by bells, by the progress of the prayers, by the way your stomach tightens as the fast continues. The rule of Saint Benedict, the book governing your entire existence, calls this a school of the Lord's service. It is more like a drill sergeant with a halo. As dawn finally breaks, pale and shivering beyond the chapel's narrow windows, you are led in procession back to the refectory. The meal is thin barley gruel, ladled out without a word. A lector recites a passage from the Gospels while you swallow each spoonful, your thoughts half listening, half protesting the tastelessness of the food. There is no conversation, no gentle chatter, only the scrape of wooden spoons on wooden bowls, and the drone of scripture. After breakfast, the bell calls you again, this time to manual labor. The abbot assigns you to help in the kitchen gardens, pulling weeds, hauling compost, digging beds for spring onions. The work is honest, at least, and you welcome it as a break from the echoing chapel. In the silence of the garden, with the smell of earth and compost in your nose, you feel a faint sense of peace. A fringe detail you overhear in silent hand gestures. Sometimes monks sneak a taste of a green onion or a radish while they work. It is one of the few small rebellions allowed, a living reminder that even the most devoted brothers have human hungers. You consider trying it yourself, but the abbot's icy gaze flashes in your memory, and you decide to behave, at least for today. The rest of the morning unfolds in a kind of trance. Your hands grow numb from cold water at the well, your knees ache from kneeling in the damp beds. But you also notice details you might have ignored before, the pattern of a beetle's tracks through the dirt, the faint sparkle of dew on cabbage leaves, the precise, sweet smell of rosemary as you crush it between your fingertips. Silence does that. It forces you to pay attention, even against your will. Back in the cloister corridors, you pass an older brother, his face sun-creased and solemn. Without a word, he taps his forehead gently, a sign for courage. You nod in return. These small moments, these brief flashes of connection, sustain you more than the gruel, more than the rote chants. When the midday bell rings, you gather again, for another round of prayer. The patterns repeat until you feel as if you might go mad. Kneel, stand, bow, chant, eat, work, kneel again. But as you shuffle through the liturgy, a curious calm begins to take root inside you, as if all that repetition is sanding down your sharper edges. Historians debate whether these repeated prayers truly reshaped the monk's mind or simply dulled it into passive obedience. Standing there, shifting on sore feet, while the incense curls up toward the timbered roof, you suspect it is both. Evening comes with a final service, the compline, and then the monastery begins to quiet completely. You return to your wooden cot, sliding between coarse blankets. Your tonsure feels sensitive from the sun and wind, still catching every draft, and you shiver once before pulling the covers tight. Lying there in the dark, you think of your family, of the world beyond these walls, of voices, So many voices you cannot hear now. You wonder if one day you might forget how to speak altogether, if the vow of silence might finally consume not just your tongue, but your whole sense of self. A distant bell signals curfew. All the men around you breathe steadily, some snoring, some turning restlessly. You close your eyes, unsure if you should pray for tomorrow to come quickly, or for it never to come at all. You rise once again, though every muscle in your body pleads for just a moment longer in the scratchy warmth of your blanket. But there is no argument to be had here, no bargaining with the rule or the bells. When they call, you obey, feet swinging down onto the cold flagstones before your mind has even caught up. Another day of prayer, work, and silence awaits. Woven together so tightly, you wonder if your own thoughts might eventually unravel. Today you learned, you will be tested on your memorization of the Psalms. The Psalter is the monk's constant companion, 150 psalms, repeated over and over until their rhythms beat inside your heart like a second pulse. The novice master signals to you with a pair of quick, precise gestures. It is your turn to recite. A tremor runs through you. These words, in Latin no less, must tumble from your mouth flawlessly, and you have barely been here long enough to learn where to hang your robe. You follow him down a corridor, lined with grim-faced statues of saints, their stony gazes fixed on you, as if judging. In a small side chapel, the novice master takes his seat on a rough stool, eyes steady and silent. He raises one hand, a signal to begin. You take a breath. The Latin syllables are clumsy on your tongue, so different from the warm syllables of home, but you force them forward. Beaeus fear qui non abia in concilio impiorum. You manage to get through the first few verses, your voice a thin thread in the stillness. Each word tastes of candle smoke and fear. Halfway through, your mind blanks, gone. Empty as the monastery courtyard in winter. Your palms sweat, heartbeat pounding like a battering ram against your ribs. The novice master waits, unmoving. You stare at his hands, the folds of his robe, anything to shake a memory loose. Nothing comes. The zust. He finally tilts his head. A subtle sign to stop. You bow your head, shame stinging worse than a switch. But he does not scold you, does not raise his voice. He only lifts 2 fingers. A gesture for again, and dismisses you to study. Historians still puzzle over whether these impossible memory feats were designed to teach true devotion or simply to keep young novices so busy they had no time for rebellion. Either way, you realize memorizing these psalms is more than a spiritual exercise. It is survival. If you cannot speak them, you cannot serve. If you cannot serve, you have no place here. You shuffle out of the side chapel, the ancient words still tumbling in your mind, and join the others in the scriptorium. Today you will copy the same verses you struggled to recite, scratching them carefully onto yellowed parchment with a quill as stiff as a straw. The room smells of stale ink and lamp oil. Rows of monks bend over their desks, the silence broken only by an occasional cough or the faint squeak of a stool shifting on stone. Your seat is near a small window, and you catch a glimpse of the courtyard beyond. A stray cat picking its way across the frost-crusted grass. For a moment, you envy that cat. It may be hungry, may be filthy, but it is free to come and go, to meow, to yowl, to make itself heard. You, in contrast, must swallow every word that tries to escape. You press your quill to the parchment, shaping each letter with painful precision. One slip, one blotch, means starting again. Hours pass, marked only by the slow melting of candles and the strain in your back. You wonder if the words will ever sink fully into your heart, or if you will spend years faking devotion, parroting lines, without ever believing them. At the midday meal, you sit in the refectory, under the drone of another brother, reading scripture aloud. The taste of stale bread and thin cabbage stew brings no joy. You glance around the table. Identical tonsures, identical blank stares, identical silence. You wonder what thoughts swirl behind those lowered eyes. Regret? Peace? Resentment? The rule says you must never ask. After the meal, you return to the garden. Your hands welcome the roughness of digging, the smell of damp earth, the forgiving nature of plants that do not care if you stumble over your Latin. You weed a patch of thyme, pinching off a sprig to breathe in its sharp scent. It is the first vivid living thing you have felt all day, and it almost makes you weep. You catch sight of an older monk, standing under the cloister arcade, watching you. He gives a tiny gesture, a single finger tapping his own lips. You recognize it now. After days of training, be still, as if you needed reminding. But stillness goes deeper than silence. It means steadying the chaos in your own head. The cell, it means shutting out the memory of a family you might never see again, a world that feels impossibly far away. It means letting these strange, sacred words hammer your soul into something new. As dusk approaches, you gather with the others for vespers, your throat ragged from chanting, though you have not spoken a personal word all day. The candles in the chapel seem to dance with every breeze, their little flames fluttering like hearts beating in a shared rhythm. The final prayer ends, and you file back through the cloister, each step echoing like a question with no answer. In the dormitory, you collapse on your cot, so tired you can barely think. But before you drift off, you catch yourself whispering a single forbidden word, so softly, only you can hear it. Home. Then you close your eyes, and the darkness takes you. The bell comes early, as always, but today its echo feels sharper, like the blade of a knife tapping against your ribs. You rise automatically, pulling your rough robe around shoulders that still ache from yesterday's garden labor. Sleep seems never to come fully here, broken into fragments by chanting, bells, and the odd terror of dreams you cannot name. You rub at your shaved scalp, wincing as the tonsure burns against the morning chill, and step out into the corridor, already crowded with your fellow monks moving in silence. Today, you sense, will be another trial of endurance, another day of obedience. The novice master has planned a lesson on humility, a lesson you suspect will leave you sore, tired, and with your pride thoroughly flattened. You move with the group toward the chapter house, a low, vaulted chamber where the brothers gather each morning to hear instructions. The air is heavy with wax and damp stone, and the flickering lamps send long, shivering shadows up the walls. You kneel at your place, eyes lowered, while the abbot enters. His presence is as commanding as a warlord, though he wears nothing fiercer than a woolen cowl. He begins with a reading from the Rule of Saint Benedict, speaking in a calm, measured cadence that seems all the more powerful for its gentleness. Today's passage is about obedience, how a monk should obey instantly without protest or argument, as if the command came from God himself. Even when the order feels humiliating, even when the order feels impossible. Historians still debate whether these strict expectations made monastic communities strong and unified, or if they simply crushed the human spirit into fearful submission. Listening to the abbot, you feel that tension keenly. It is hard to know if you are being shaped, or simply broken. After the reading, the novice master signals that you will serve in the kitchens. You rise without complaint, though a small voice inside you rails against it. In the outside world, you are no scullion. Here you are no one. And so to the kitchens you go. The monastery's kitchen is a dim, smoke-stained room, dominated by a great hearth, where a thin barley gruel bubbles. A few turnips and beans lie on a wooden board, waiting to be chopped. Brother Arel, a stooped older monk, hands you a battered knife and points to a heap of onions. You get the message. Slice, and keep slicing. The knife is dull, the onions sharp, your eyes water until you can barely see. The vow of silence makes it worse. You cannot even curse, cannot even groan to another person about the sting. You wipe tears on your sleeve, blinking hard, hands steady despite the burning in your eyes. You try to think of the Psalms, letting the rhythm distract you. But today the words stick in your throat. Over hours of chopping, you notice how the kitchens, too, have their own language. A tap of a spoon means more salt. A lifted pot lid means taste. A raised eyebrow can mean watch the fire. No words, but plenty of messages woven into the same silent web that rules the rest of monastic life. Now and then, a brother comes to the serving hatch to collect food for the infirmary, or for travelers. Monasteries, in this age, act as hospitals of a sort, even as hotels for pilgrims, and feeding the sick and strangers is considered holy work. Yet you notice, and it startles you, that the best barley, the softest bread, goes to the abbot. Everyone else eats what is left. A tiny rebellious thought sparks in you. If this is holy, it does not look very fair. But you chase the thought away. Even thoughts can feel dangerous here, as if God himself might hear and disapprove. The midday bell calls you back to prayer. With your hands still smelling of onions and turnip, you kneel on the cold chapel floor, blinking hard, trying to keep focus as the words of the liturgy swirl around you. Your knees ache, your back aches, and somewhere deep inside, you ache in a place no physician could ever reach. Silence again becomes your prison and your teacher. You hear every cough, every faint wheeze, every shuffle of feet across flagstones. With no talk to drown them out, those tiny noises become an entire symphony. You wonder if the others hear them too, or if their minds are already so trained that only the psalms reach them now. After the service, you return to the kitchen, this time to wash the pots. The water is gritty and cold, scalding one moment from the boiled kettle, then icy the next as you rinse. Your hands turn red and raw, skin cracking in the wet. Yet you keep working, because the novice master watches, and even a moment of rest can earn harsh penance. It is in these mundane, grinding chores that humility blooms, or so the rule claims. You try to accept it, to see the holiness in scraping burnt food from a kettle, or scrubbing crumbs off a rough wooden table. But your heart resists. You remember being free to speak, to laugh, to wander. It seems so far away now, as if it belonged to someone else. Outside the kitchen window, you glimpse a group of traveling pilgrims arriving at the guest house. They are loud, dusty, exhausted from the road, but alive in a way you hardly remember. Their laughter, you can see it in their faces, even if you cannot hear the words, stabs you with longing. As dusk gathers, you clean the last pot, stack it neatly, and dry your hands on your robe. Another bell, another prayer, another night, rolling in to close the circle. You move in the great silence to the dormitory, where dozens of shaved heads lie down to dream. Each man alone with his thoughts, each man surrounded by the hush that never leaves these walls. You pull your blanket close, pressing your forehead against the rough linen, and breathe deeply. Tomorrow, they say, will be easier. Tomorrow you will obey faster, remember more verses, complain less in your heart. Tomorrow, perhaps, you will believe that is true. But for tonight, you let the darkness hold you, the taste of onions still clinging to your fingers, and hope your mind stays your own a little while longer. The morning bell carves through your dreams like a blade, pulling you out of a half-sleep, where your thoughts had been wandering across fields you might never see again. You jerk awake, limbs heavy, eyes crusted with exhaustion. The communal dormitory is already alive with the faint rustle of robes and the shuffle of sandaled feet. Nobody speaks, of course. Nobody ever does. The vow of silence holds all of you together, wrapped in a hush so thick you almost feel it press against your skin. You swing your legs over the edge of your cot, toes curling against the cold stone, and stand. The routine is instinctive by now. Robe tied, tonsure smoothed with trembling fingers, a brief moment to straighten your blanket before following the line of brothers out into the corridor. You move like a school of fish, each man guided by the same silent current, heading toward the chapel for lauds, the early morning prayers that greet the rising sun. The air in the chapel is thick with the mingled smell of candle grease, incense, and damp stone. A few crows caw beyond the windows, their harsh voices startling in contrast to your enforced quiet. You kneel, eyes fixed on a crucifix whose paint has cracked over centuries, and try to steady your mind for the Psalms. Today your body feels clumsy, your voice even more so. The Latin stumbles off your tongue, thin and hesitant. Sleep deprivation wraps around you like a wet cloak. But you push forward, because that is what is expected, because you do not get to decide. After prayers, you are assigned to help in the scriptorium, a welcome change from the harsh sting of onions in the kitchen. The scriptorium is a place of quiet industry, where men bend over desks to copy holy texts by the dim light of tall, horn-covered windows. The room smells of ink, vellum, and the faint, sour tang of sweat. Your station is a battered wooden table, with an inkwell chipped along one side. The parchment laid out before you is thin and almost translucent, and you pause as always to marvel that such a fragile thing can carry the word of God. Beside you, a senior monk scratches out a careful letter, P, his quill moving in steady loops, a rhythm so practiced you might believe he had been born doing it. Brother Ambrose, the overseer of the scriptorium, watches everyone with the cool eye of a hawk. If your letters wander even a hair from the ruled lines, he will spot it. No scolding allowed, of course. Just a small gesture. 2 fingers flicked sideways, start again. You dip your own quill, hands shaking. The ink is thick, smells vaguely of iron and wine, and pools darkly on the page if you hesitate. You shape the first letters of the psalm, trying to remember the same words you'd fumbled in morning prayer. Your shoulders begin to burn within minutes. Your back soon joins in, hunched awkwardly over the uneven table. Historians still discuss whether monks genuinely found copying scripture a path to divine peace, or whether it was simply mind-numbing rote labor. The truth, you suspect, is both. Some days, the rhythm is soothing, like a lullaby. Other days, it feels like trying to trace the grain of wood with your bare fingernail until your mind goes blank. Hours pass. Candles gutter, spitting hot wax on the table. Your quill scratches on, word after word, verse after verse. The vow of silence is easier to bear here, because words live under your hands, even if they cannot live on your tongue. There is a strange relief in knowing your thoughts can still flow, even if you cannot voice them. At midday, you break for a meal in the refectory, where the routine never changes. Thin broth, a crust of bread, and a brother, reading from a worn manuscript, as the rest of you swallow in silence. The vow of silence is perhaps hardest at meals, when every human instinct wants to share, to murmur, to complain, but you bury those urges, the way a stone sinks in water, until they vanish under the still surface. After the meal, you are sent back to the scriptorium, Brother Ambrose assigns you a new passage, a genealogy, endless strings of names, each one holy and precious, and to your tired mind, nearly impossible to spell. You try to remember the training. Keep your wrist loose, your mind focused, your breathing steady. Yet your thoughts betray you, wandering toward dreams you once had, a family, a trade, a place of your own. A fringe tale floats through your head. A rumor that a monk once went mad in the scriptorium, driven by the same name repeated for days until he began to chant it over and over in the night. No one is sure if it really happened, but every novice hears the warning. You swallow and push the thought away. The afternoon light slants through the windows, turning the dust motes into tiny gold dancers. You pause for a moment, letting your eyes rest on that calm glow, letting yourself feel something close to peace. Then you dip the quill again, returning to your labor. When the final bell of the day calls you to vespers, you rise stiff and aching, hands stained black with ink. You shuffle in line with the others, back to the chapel, feeling a kind of eerie kinship with these men, silent, hollowed out, shaped by rules older than memory. Kneeling once more, you hear the chant rise around you, and for the briefest moment, you think you catch your own voice in it, steady, calm, woven with all the others. It is a strange comfort, this collective song, as if a tiny piece of your lost self is given back each evening in prayer. After the last amen, you follow the group back to the dormitory. Your hands are cramped, your shoulders scream for rest, but your mind is clearer than it has been in days. Maybe, you think, you could survive this after all. Maybe, you lie down on the same rough cot, pull the wool blanket around you, and listen to the night breathing through the cloister's corridors. You do not dream of freedom tonight. You dream only of letters, dark and perfect, marching across parchment like tiny prayers in their own right. And let that dream carry you into sleep. The bells find you before dawn, as they always do, dragging you from a dream of letters and fields, of a place where your voice was once free. You blink against the darkness, the rough wool of your blanket scratching your chin, and force yourself upright. Your shoulders still burn from hours in the scriptorium yesterday, and your knees ache from countless prayers. But there is no room for excuses here. The rule does not forgive soft complaints, and neither does the novice master. You join the slow-moving line of monks toward the chapel, your bare scalp catching the faint chill of early morning air. Outside, the world is still hushed, save for a few crows scolding the coming dawn. You almost envy them, free to cry out, to call, to scream if they wished. You, meanwhile, stand silent, your words trapped in the small, disciplined corners of chant and ritual. Lauds begins, the same measured Latin rolling across the choir stalls, and you slip into the rhythm. The chant pulls you along, steady as a river current, and for a moment you forget the ache in your bones. These psalms, you are told, are medicine for the soul, poured out drop by drop until they shape you into a vessel for God's will. Yet you cannot help wondering if, along the way, you might forget the sound of your own laughter. After the office, the novice master signals a work assignment. Today, it will be the laundry. You have heard rumors, unspoken of course, but passed in subtle gestures, that laundry day is both blessing and punishment. It means hours outside, near the river, but also hours with freezing water and raw soap that strips skin as easily as dirt. You gather your bundle of linens and follow a trail worn by countless monks before you, down a muddy path toward the riverbank beyond the monastery walls. The world outside the cloister seems shockingly alive. Sparrows flit through the reeds, frogs croak under a half-collapsed dock, and in the distance you see travelers on the road, shouting to one another in a bright human voice you have nearly forgotten. At the river, the cold bites your hands instantly. You kneel on a rough plank and begin scrubbing, twisting, beating the cloth against smooth stones. Your fingers go numb, your wrists burn, and the water soaks your sleeves almost to the elbow. Each monk falls into the same rhythm, pounding and rinsing, pounding and rinsing, no one saying a word. The silence seems almost heavier here, under the open sky. No bells, no walls, no chanting, just the steady slap of cloth against rock and the occasional distant lowing of cattle. Historians sometimes speculate that these silent tasks were designed to keep the monks from gossiping or from thinking about escape, because here, outside the gates, the temptation would be sharp as a blade. 1 foot on the path, 1 second of weakness, and you might vanish into the world again. Yet you stay. All of you do. You work until your knuckles sting, until the soap crusts white on your hands, until the smell of river mud becomes something you can no longer notice. There is a peace in this, you realize, a strange raw peace in knowing that you are small, obedient, and part of something that will go on, whether you succeed or fail. Around midday, the novice master gestures for you to stop. You wring out the last tunic, arms shaking, then help carry the sodden cloth back to the cloister's drying yard. The cloth is pinned to ropes strung between rough posts, flapping in the breeze like pale, half-finished flags. Your reward for a morning of back-breaking work is the same thin meal, stale bread, weak ale, and a few bits of onion swimming in broth. The lector reads a passage about humility as you chew, and you wonder if there is any word the monastery worships more. Humility seems to lie behind every rule, every ritual, every sacrifice. In the afternoon, you are sent to help prepare wax candles for the chapel. You work beside Brother Jourdain, a monk whose silence is so profound he seems almost carved from wood. The wax is melted in great copper kettles, its scent surprisingly sweet, reminding you faintly of honey. Carefully, you dip wicks into the warm golden liquid, again and again, building up layer after layer, until a candle emerges. Straight and strong, meant to burn steady through long nights of prayer. Brother Jourdain demonstrates with patient hands, smoothing imperfections, pinching bubbles from the cooling wax. You try to follow, though your fingers are clumsy from the cold river and the rough soap. A bubble bursts along the side of your candle, sending wax spattering onto your wrist, and you bite the inside of your cheek to keep from crying out. The vow of silence stands unshaken, even through pain. Later, while the candles harden on their racks, you steal a moment to look at them. Each one is simple, plain, but each represents light in the darkness. A bit of hope, you suppose, though you are not sure if that hope is for the monks or for the prayers they offer. Evening comes, as it always does, with vespers. You kneel on the same worn spot, your mind drifting in and out of the psalms, your body aching, but somehow, as the choir voices weave together, you feel carried along. The vow of silence still wraps you tight, but in this moment, the chant makes it almost bearable. After the final bell, you return to the dormitory, your hands raw, your arms trembling from cold, your knees bruised from prayer. You lie on your cot, staring up into the shadows, dancing across the beams, and wonder if somewhere out there, in the wide world, your name still means anything at all. Before sleep comes, you feel a small prayer slip across your mind, a silent one, meant only for yourself, and maybe for something greater, to let me remember who I am, and then the dark takes you, one more night of quiet dreams. The bell tears through your slumber, like an unwelcome herald, its hollow clang bouncing off the dormitory's bare stone walls. You push yourself up, limbs refusing at first, your joints thick with fatigue. It is still night black beyond the windows, the air sharp and raw enough to sting your lungs. You stand, because you must, gathering your robe around you, smoothing the tonsure that prickles against the chill, then step into line behind the others as you shuffle toward the chapel. Today, you sense, will be harder. Perhaps it is the weariness stacked on your bones, or the taste of last night's prayer, still lingering, heavy and unsatisfying. Or perhaps it is the burden of nocturnes, the midnight vigil, which has left you with so little rest that even thought feels dim and watery. You kneel on the stone floor as the first verses begin. A chorus of flat voices, almost mechanical, fills the echoing darkness. Your tongue moves by habit, forming the familiar Latin syllables of the Psalms, but your mind drifts far beyond the walls. You picture a summer field, sweet grass under a wide blue sky, the chatter of neighbors, the laughter of children. A sting of longing blooms in your chest, so sudden it almost breaks you. But there is no space for longing. You drag yourself back into the rhythm of the chant, mouth working through lines you only half understand. Historians still argue whether these endless repetitions, night after night, were a gateway to mystical devotion or a calculated means of control. You suspect it is both. As the minutes stretch on, something strange happens. Your mind grows quiet, as if surrendering to the monotony, letting the psalms wash over you until even the ache in your heart is smoothed flat. When matins ends, the monks file into the cloister, walk in silence. Outside, a faint grayness is stealing into the world. The first breath of dawn. You breathe it in, cool and earthy, tinged with wood smoke. For one heartbeat, you feel free. But the illusion shatters as the novice master gestures you onward. Today, you are sent to the infirmary to help Brother Lucas, the monk responsible for tending the sick. The monastery does what little it can for the ailing, a mix of faith, herbs, and gentle routine. You have heard Brother Lucas described in hushed gestures as a miracle worker, though you suspect most of his miracles come from knowing how to boil thyme and cover a wound. The infirmary is a quiet wing, its windows cracked to let in thin winter light. Straw mattresses lie in rows, each holding a man whose face is pale or sunken or lined with pain. You help gather fresh water, wash soiled cloths, and steady hands that tremble. No words pass between you and the patients. Your vow of silence holds, but you learn to speak with touch, to offer a kind pressure on a shoulder, a nod of the head, a moment of steady breathing shared. Brother Lucas shows you how to mix a poultice of honey and rosemary for sores. He does it all with simple, measured movements, occasionally signing a quick instruction you do your best to mimic. The herbs smell sharp, reminding you of kitchens and warm kitchens at home, a detail that nearly undoes you with homesickness. Among the patients is a traveling mason who fell from scaffolding and shattered his leg. His groans break through the silence at times, pitiful and desperate. Brother Lucas tries to soothe him with soft gestures, a touch of the hand, a prayer drawn across his brow. You hold the man's arm as the wound is redressed, his skin hot and slick with sweat. You wonder if he, too, dreams of escaping these walls, or if he wishes only to stand again. Later, you help clean the tiny apothecary, shelves stacked with glass bottles of odd powders and dried roots. Brother Lucas teaches you the Latin names with a series of silent signs: asterisk lavandula, asterisk for lavender, asterisk hyssopus, asterisk for hyssop, asterisk botanica, asterisk for wood, betony. You repeat them in your mind like a secret song, one of the few places where words still feel alive. By midday, your stomach is growling, but you do not dare complain. The midday bell calls you to the refectory, where again you endure the tasteless broth, the stale bread, and the relentless voice of the lector reading aloud from the rule. You chew without pleasure, eyes on the knotted grain of the table. A brother near you fumbles with his spoon, sending a splash of broth onto your sleeve, but he cannot apologize. Instead, he makes a small apologetic tilt of the head, and you reply with a tiny nod. You share a moment of silent forgiveness, then return to your meal, two voiceless souls side by side. The afternoon takes you back to the infirmary, where Brother Lucas tests you with harder tasks. Steeping fever tea, mixing a powder of ground sage, measuring honey for a cough tonic. Each act feels like a prayer in motion, a different kind of psalm offered by your hands. A thin part of you, so thin it is almost a whisper, wonders if this is the truest form of worship, tending flesh and bone rather than reciting endless lines in a language you barely understand. The hours drift, marked only by the shuffling of sick men and the muted clatter of buckets. Outside, you glimpse the sun low against the horizon, catching in the bare branches like a dying flame. You breathe in its fading light, let it warm your face, then turn back to your duties. At vespers, you file once more to the chapel, sore from labor, your hands still smelling of herbs and vinegar. The psalms flow around you, soft and relentless, washing you clean of the day's burdens, or trying to. Somewhere in the darkness behind your eyelids, you wonder if you will ever know a prayer in your own language again, a prayer made of your own words. The day ends as every day does. You lie down on the narrow cot, heart still echoing with half-finished thoughts, body bruised from kneeling, mind weary from watching the suffering of others. Sleep hovers over you, slow and uncertain, until you finally give in. As your eyes close, you think of Brother Lucas's gentle hands, of the mason's broken leg, of the herbs whose names still ring sweet in your memory. And you wonder, drifting, if perhaps there is some healing for you too, hidden in these quiet, unspoken hours. The night seems to slip through the dormitory's narrow windows like a thief, stealing warmth and leaving only damp stone in its place. You wake before the bell, heart pounding for reasons you cannot name. Perhaps a dream left its claws in you, or perhaps the constant demands of this life have left you too alert. A soldier in a war of prayers. When the bell finally rings, you move with the others in that familiar silent procession. Robes brush against rough floorboards, sandals slap faintly, and the faint scent of wax from the guttering dormitory candles clings to your hair and your tonsure. As you pass beneath the archway to the cloister, a gust of icy air makes your scalp sting. You grit your teeth and follow. Today, the novice master has chosen to test your obedience more sharply. He signals with 2 short flicks of the hand that you will join the obedientia, a sort of duty squad assigned any unpleasant task the abbot sees fit. You bow your head in acceptance, though your stomach coils in dread. The obedience team means one thing: wherever the work is harshest, you will go. The chapel prayers are shorter this morning, perhaps mercifully. Then, you are sent straight to the pig yard, the corner of the monastery that smells of straw rot and something so potent it nearly makes your eyes water. The pigs grunt and shift in their pens, half asleep, barely noticing your arrival. You are to clean their stalls, a chore so filthy and thankless even the hardest brothers groan, though not aloud, of course. You fetch a battered pitchfork, step into the muck, and begin scraping away the foul bedding, tossing it into a wheelbarrow that lists to one side with every load. The stench wraps around you until you cannot remember any other scent. It seeps into your robe, your hair, even your skin, until you fear you will carry it back to your prayers, like a dark, sour halo. Historians still debate whether these disgusting, humiliating chores were meant to crush the monk's sense of pride or to show him how all labor, no matter how low, could be offered up as service to God. You suspect it was both. After an hour knee-deep in filth, it is hard to feel anything other than small and unworthy. Brother Henri, a burly monk with hands like shovels, works beside you, moving with surprising gentleness as he shovels. Every so often, he glances over and gives you a subtle nod of encouragement, a reminder that even in silence, a sort of brotherhood survives. You cling to that tiny sign, as the pigs grunt and trample your clean straw faster than you can spread it. By midday, the ache in your shoulders feels almost noble. The worst of the filth is cleared, and you pause by the water trough, scrubbing your hands until the cold bites under your fingernails. You stare at your reflection in the ripples, a tonsured head, hollow eyes, skin flecked with straw. For a moment, you don't quite recognize yourself. The refectory meal is thin, the same tepid broth and bread, but you eat it gratefully. The lector reads from a treatise on humility, words that seem to echo your morning's work: the greatest must become the least. You chew on that phrase as if it were actual food, wondering how far down the least really goes. The afternoon brings no rest. You are sent to help mend a section of the monastery wall where wind and rain have worn away the mortar. The work is hard, rough on hands already raw from the pig yard, but at least the cold air feels cleaner than what you left behind. You carry buckets of lime, pass stones along a human chain, and pack the mortar into the gaps until your knuckles bleed. At one point, the abbot passes by, eyes sharp as a hawk's. He does not pause to thank you, but you sense he sees everything: how you labor, how you obey, how you bear the weight of silence. There is a kind of unspoken pride in his expression, though it is so slight you might have imagined it. Evening prayers arrive as a relief. Though you are bone-tired, you kneel in the chapel, sweat drying on your shoulders, under the scratchy robe. The chants roll through the dim space, weaving around you like a blanket, and you let yourself sink into their familiar pattern. A fringe story drifts through your memory as you pray. A half-remembered tale passed by the novices in secret hand gestures. That one monk long ago had finally refused to clean the pig yard, shouting that no holy man should grovel in dung. He had been sent away in disgrace, they say, and died alone. The lesson is obvious. Here you bend, or you break. After compline, you file back to the dormitory, each step heavy, each breath measured. You slide under the rough blanket, too tired even to think of home, though you try. Your hands still smell faintly of lime and straw, no matter how many times you scrub them. As sleep begins to pull you under, you think of Brother Henry's quiet nod, the small acts of silent kindness that stitch this harsh life together. Maybe, you reason, those gestures are as holy as any psalm, a language of mercy carried in the eyes and hands when no words are allowed. And with that tiny comfort, you finally let go and rest. Sleep deserts you before the bell does, leaving you awake in the darkness with nothing but your thoughts for company. They march through your mind in circles. The chant, the pigs, the endless repetition of prayers, until you feel like a wheel turning without end. The rule says such thoughts are temptations, but you cannot help them. In this world of enforced quiet, your own mind becomes loud enough to drown you. When the bell finally comes, you feel almost relieved. You move through the ritual of dressing, smoothing your tonsure, tying the cord around your waist, folding your blanket precisely as expected. These small patterns soothe something in you, like a child holding a favorite toy. Outside the dormitory, the cloister walk glimmers with cold moonlight. You join the silent line of brothers and head to the chapel. Today is the first day of Lent, the beginning of the great fast, and it shows in the strained faces around you. The rule tightens its grip during these weeks. Less food, stricter watches, longer prayers, fewer comforts. You swallow hard, remembering what a normal winter day feels like here. Already hungry, already tired, and realize how sharp Lent will cut. Lauds begins with the Psalms of Penance. They fall on your ears like rain on stones, gentle in sound, but relentless. You taste the weight of each phrase. Miserere me Deus. Have mercy on me, O God. You mouth the words over and over until you feel them vibrating in your chest. Somewhere inside, you believe them. Somewhere deeper, you still doubt. After prayer, you are assigned to the refectory, not to eat, but to serve. Lent demands stricter meals, fewer scraps, no meat at all, and the novices must portion them out. You stand behind a steaming pot of turnip and barley, ladling thin, gray stew into each brother's bowl. No chatter, no complaint, just the slow shuffle of wooden bowls and the occasional hiss of the fire. A few brothers look half ill with hunger already. You feel a sting of guilt as you serve them, though you eat no better. One brother's hand shakes as he holds his bowl. You catch his eye, offer the tiniest nod of comfort, and he nods back. In this silence, that is the loudest kindness you have to give. After the meal, your own portion is so small it barely takes the edge off your belly. Your hands shake as you rise, and you nearly stumble over the bench. The lector continues reading the rule, reminding everyone that hunger is a blessed teacher, that the emptier the stomach, the fuller the heart. You want to believe it, but your stomach still growls. Mid-morning brings a new obedience, mending robes in the cloister. You are given a bent needle, a ball of rough brown thread, and a pile of garments so full of holes you wonder how they still hold together at all. You pick at the seams, fingers clumsy with cold, trying to line up each ragged tear. A brother named Udo sits nearby, working on a sleeve with surprising skill. He was once a tailor in the outside world. You learn through a few careful signs. He shows you how to turn the cloth so the stitch will not pull, how to knot the thread so it will not fray. There is a calm about him, a peace that makes you ache with envy. You wonder if he carries it from his old life, or if he has somehow found it here. You work together through the long morning. The only sound the faint clatter of the bell, calling you to yet more prayers. Back to the chapel. Back to your knees. You try to keep the psalms in your mind, but they blur now, as if all the Latin syllables have melted together into a single endless word. A fringe detail drifts through your thoughts. A rumor passed in hand signals from another novice. Supposedly, once in an abbey far away, a monk starved himself so thoroughly during Lent that he had visions of angels feeding him bread in secret. Some say it was divine grace. Others say he died raving. Historians still debate whether such stories are cautionary tales or true miracles. Your stomach pinches sharply at the thought of bread. You push the image away. The afternoon brings no relief. The novice master orders you into the garden to turn soil for spring planting. The earth is still stiff with winter, and each thrust of the spade jars your arms to the shoulders. Blisters bloom along your palms, popping and weeping in the cold air. But you dig on, because you must. Silence weighs more heavily during physical labor. You want to curse the rocks, want to sigh, want to joke with the others about the stubborn clay. But there is no space for any of that. You lean on the handle of your spade once, catching your breath, and see another novice wiping his eyes with a dirt-smudged sleeve. You cannot tell if it is sweat or tears. Maybe he cannot tell either. At last, the bell calls you away, back to the cloister, for vespers. You feel half dead, so empty that the words of the chant barely touch you, but you mouth them anyway, out of habit, out of fear, out of hope, you cannot say. When the final prayers finish, you return to the dormitory, arms burning, knees bruised, throat dry. You climb onto your cot, pulling the thin blanket over you, wishing the rule allowed more softness. You think of bread again, the simple sweetness of it, and nearly weep as you close your eyes. A single prayer flickers inside you, yours alone. Not the rules, not the abbots, not even in Latin, just a simple, wordless plea. Let me wake up stronger tomorrow. Sleep comes cold and thin, but enough. You wake to the deep ache of muscle and bone, a weariness that seems to settle even into your skull, making thought feel heavy and clumsy. The bell calls, slicing through the dormitory like a blade, and you rise before you have time to question it. The rule allows no hesitation. You rub your hands across your face, feel the scabs from yesterday's blisters, and remind yourself to endure. Always endure. Lent continues to strip everything away. No meat, of course, only watery barley with a few lonely scraps of root vegetables. No laughter, no indulgence, no words beyond the Psalms. Even the hours themselves feel stripped to bone, pared down to prayer, obedience, silence, and more prayer. You pull on your robe, scratchy and stiff from constant wear, and join the others in the pre-dawn gloom. The lanterns in the cloister corridor gutter in the wind, painting you all in shuddering yellow light. The monks walk in a silent line, bald crowns catching the faint shimmer of lamp oil, each man carrying the same hollow look you've begun to see in the mirror. Lauds feels longer today, though it is the same verses, the same solemn chant. Your knees complain on the cold flagstone, but you dare not shift too much. Brother Severin, the novice master, watches with a gaze as sharp as a hawk's. You try to focus on the words, asterisk domine, exaudi, oration, mimes, asterisk, Lord, hear my prayer. But your mind wanders to dreams of warm bread, sweet milk, a bed without a stone under your ribs. The prayers end. Another obedience awaits. You are sent to help Brother Martin in the herbal garden, a place that should feel peaceful, but today seems gray and lifeless. The March wind rattles the old wattle fence as you kneel beside a row of stunted rosemary bushes, trying to scrape away the winter mulch. Your fingers are so numb you barely feel the stems. Brother Martin gestures for you to look carefully at the roots. Rot, he warns you with a sign pointing to a patch of blackness near the base. You nod, though you barely comprehend. Your head feels stuffed with wool. Together you prune the dead sprigs, picking away mold, clearing tangled weeds. The smell of crushed rosemary lifts into the cold air, sharp and cleansing, and for a moment it makes you remember summer kitchens, the scent of lamb stew, a time when hunger was rare. The memory nearly breaks you. Mid-morning brings a brief pause for water. Not wine, not milk, only thin river water, gritty sometimes with silt. If the barrels settle poorly, you drink it with forced gratitude, and then return to work, knees in mud, hands stained green. A few bees already wander from their winter hives, nosing the rosemary flowers. You envy them their easy purpose. Historians still puzzle over whether monastic herbalists truly healed better than common village healers, or whether their prayers simply gave people hope enough to recover. Brother Martin seems competent though, moving with quiet certainty as he checks each plant, mimes a sign for you to compost the worst of the rot, and starts mixing a paste of thyme and vinegar for sores. You watch closely, trying to remember each gesture, each herb. After midday prayers, you eat. Or try. The broth is thinner than ever. Its only comfort, its heat. You swallow, trying not to look around at the other brothers, their sunken cheeks and downcast eyes. One of them, a young novice from the north, seems on the verge of tears as he picks apart his bread crust, perhaps wishing he were anywhere else. You share a tiny glance, no pity, just a kind of solidarity, and return to your bowl. The afternoon brings another obedience. Polishing the great candlesticks of the chapel. You carry them, one at a time, into the cloister walk, where sunlight falls bright across their brass. With a cloth and a dab of ashes for grit, you rub each one until the metal shines. The effort makes your shoulders scream, but there is something soothing in watching them slowly glow. It is, in its own way, a prayer, offering light to the building that demands so much darkness from your heart. As you polish, you think of how those candles burn, night after night, uncomplaining, how they devour themselves to give others comfort. The metaphor is almost too easy, but you cannot ignore it. Brother Severin checks your work. A small approving gesture with 2 fingers raised. For a moment your chest loosens, that brief spark of being seen, even praised enough to keep you steady. Vespers comes, the same as always, though a chill wind rattles the stained glass windows, making the candle flames dance. You kneel, chant, stand, kneel again, a human wave rolling with the psalms rise and fall. By now the words live in your marrow, whether you wish them to or not. After compline, you return to the dormitory, body buzzing with exhaustion, arms still faintly shaking from the brass polish. You lie on the cot, fingers curled, eyes open to the timbered ceiling. A draft stirs against your tonsure, raising goosebumps. You try to pray in your own words, quietly, in your heart, but nothing comes except the same plea as yesterday. Some word. It feels hopeless, almost foolish, but you think it anyway, because there is nothing else left to do. Sleep drags you under like a river, and you surrender to it, candlelight dancing in your mind as you fade. The bell tears through your skull before your dreams have even finished unraveling. You wake with a sour taste in your mouth, a reminder of stale barley broth, and a night of half-sleep on a straw-stuffed cot that never seems to soften. You roll stiffly, every joint aching, and glance around at the line of shorn heads, rising one by one, in the dim candlelight. The vow of silence holds all of you in its grip. Even here, even in these first fumbling moments of the day, you stand, robe clinging to your skin with a cold dampness, and join the shuffling column of monks headed to the chapel. The air bites at your bare scalp, raising goosebumps. It is still hours before sunrise, and the chill feels personal, as though the night itself is testing you. Today, you have been told, is set aside for confession, a day to examine the smallest of sins and cleanse your soul before Easter. The thought makes your belly twist. Confession in this monastery is no gentle talk. It is a ritual as rigid and unforgiving as everything else. Lauds proceeds as usual, your voice stumbling through psalms that you could recite in your sleep by now. You repeat the verses without meaning, barely tasting them, your mind caught on what comes next. Revealing your failings in front of a confessor, every careless thought, every impulse toward escape, every flicker of rebellion, all must be named. When the prayers end, Brother Severin signals for the novices to gather in the chapter house. The walls are high and gray, lined with wooden benches worn smooth by centuries of anxious bodies. You take your place at the far end and pull your robe close, as if it might shield you. The confessor arrives in silence, a thin, stern man whose eyes seem to pierce straight through flesh and bone. One by one, the novices are called forward. You watch as they kneel, heads bowed, hands trembling, forced to sign out their confessions or whisper them in Latin. Some stumble, some weep. There is no pity in the confessor's face, only an occasional curt nod, and a penance assigned with the flick of a hand. When your turn comes, your legs nearly refuse you. But you stand, step forward, and kneel on the cold stones before him. The silence roars in your head. You sign carefully, the gestures drilled into you. I have harbored unholy thoughts. I have doubted. Your fingers freeze for a moment, then add, I have wanted to leave. The confessor watches, lips tightening, but does not interrupt. He waits until you finish, then raises 2 fingers, a sign that your penance will be harsh. You bow your head, trying not to let the shame burn through your eyes. Your punishment is simple but brutal. Extra vigils through the night, and a fast for 3 days on water and bread alone. A cleansing, they call it, though it feels more like a sentence. You return to your place on the bench, heart pounding, stomach already complaining in dread of the coming hunger. Around you, other novices shift uncomfortably. A few stare blankly, numb from their own confessions. You wonder what secrets they had to drag into the light. Secret loves, hatreds, stolen scraps of food, wishes to run. Historians still debate whether these communal confessions brought true spiritual release, or simply terror. There is evidence, some say, that novices grew more obedient after such humiliations. Others believe it only deepened their misery. Sitting there, you think it is probably both. When confession ends, the brothers file to the refectory for the meager midday meal. But you, and those with heavy penances, are given only a chunk of bread, so hard it nearly cracks your teeth, and a clay cup of water. You chew slowly, swallowing around the knot in your throat. The lector reads from the Rule of Saint Benedict, speaking of humility as the highest virtue, the path to heaven. You want to believe him, but it is hard to be holy on an empty stomach. Afterward, you are sent to the fields, where spring plowing has begun. The novice master sets you behind a wooden plow, pulled by a pair of sleepy oxen. The handles blister your palms with every jolt, and your arms soon throb as though they will fall off. You push anyway, remembering your penance, forcing your body to pay its due. Mud cakes your robe, splashes your face, clings to your knees. The oxen seem half dead with boredom, and you envy them their simple minds. They need only pull, and chew, and sleep. You must remember prayers, and rules, and sins, and penances, a burden so heavy you fear it will crush you before the harvest ever grows. As dusk settles, the plow is cleaned, the oxen led away, and you trudge back to the cloister, legs wobbling. You have never felt so hollow, yet somehow there is a strange peace in it. Emptiness, in this place, is considered a kind of virtue. Vespers feels even longer than usual, your head spinning from hunger and exhaustion. You kneel and stand on instinct alone, words blurring into a monotonous wave that rocks you half asleep. When the final bell rings, you can barely stand. In the dormitory, you collapse onto your cot, stomach screaming, hands still stained with mud, throat raw from chanting. You close your eyes and think of your confession, the words you signed, the guilt that clings like pitch to your bones. You wonder if God truly forgives, or if forgiveness here is only a convenient story to keep men quiet. Sleep comes fitfully, full of strange dreams of open gates, of roads that lead away, of bread that never grows stale. You wake once, staring at the moon through the narrow window, and feel a prayer form on your lips, though you do not dare speak it. Let me be free, if only in my heart. Then you slip under again, into a silence deeper than any vow. You wake with a soreness that seems to have sunk into the marrow of your bones. Hunger twists through you like a knot, reminding you of yesterday's confession and the harsh penance still ahead. Only bread and water today. Only silence heavier than ever, pressed into your skull so firmly you feel it in your teeth. The bell calls you, steady and pitiless, and you obey. You stand, joints complaining, robe cold against your skin, and step into the line of monks headed for the chapel. There is no chatter, of course. No one even dares a sigh. It is as if the whole monastery breathes in one vast silent hush, swallowing its doubts before they ever leave the mind. In the chapel, the air smells of last night's wax, and a hint of wet stone. You kneel on the hard flagstones, shifting to find a place that doesn't grind against the bruises on your knees. Matins begins. The same solemn Latin phrases you know by heart. You chant them with the others. Voice a ragged thread, stomach howling even as you try to keep rhythm. A single candle burns on the altar, its flame small and defiant in the gloom. You fix your eyes on it, letting it anchor you through the prayer, the way a drowning man might cling to a piece of driftwood. The words swirl around you, so familiar now, they hardly feel like language, more like a heartbeat. The community shares. After prayers, Brother Severin signals you and 2 others for another obedience, a stone-hauling duty at the quarry just beyond the monastery's walls. Your heart sinks. That place is backbreaking on a good day. On a day with an empty belly and raw hands, it feels impossible. You march out through the cloister gate, the world beyond the monastery suddenly seeming too big, too loud. A cawing crow startles you, and you almost wince at its freedom. The path to the quarry winds through scrubby grass, dew soaking your thin shoes, and your legs already feel wobbly before you even see the first pile of stones. Brother Udo, a hulking man with hands the size of spades, demonstrates how to lift the largest blocks. A single heave, shoulders braced, back flat. You try to copy him, but your arms feel hollow, weak from fasting and prayer. The first stone nearly slips from your grasp, and only a silent nod from Brother Udo keeps you steady. He will not speak. No one will. But in that small nod is a lifeline. You are not alone. Even here, the sun climbs, pale behind thin clouds, while you haul stone after stone. Your knees shake. Your mouth tastes of iron and dry spit. At one point, you catch yourself reciting a psalm under your breath, just to stay awake, even though it brings no comfort. Quer tristis es, anima mea. Why are you cast down, my soul? Historians still question whether these punishing labors were truly about penance or simply about survival. After all, someone had to build the walls, mend the chapel, repair the paths. Maybe it was both. As you shift another heavy block, you feel a strange pride flicker through your exhaustion. You are helping hold up this place, this brotherhood, even if it is a prison. At midday, you receive your bread and water. Nothing more. The bread is stale, crumbling in your mouth, leaving grit between your teeth. You chew slowly, trying to fool your stomach into believing you have eaten. You dare not glance around. It is easier not to see the other hungry eyes, the other hollow faces. After a brief prayer, you return to the quarry. Afternoon drags on. A haze of lifting, shuffling, lowering, breathing, praying. Your hands blister open, the raw edges stinging against the rough stone. You bite your tongue, so you will not groan. You taste blood. Brother Udo's presence. anchors you again. He moves like an ox, unstoppable. But whenever your shoulders sag, he meets your eyes with a flicker of understanding. No words pass, but you sense he is praying for you in his own mind, the way you pray for him. At last, the bell rings for vespers, and you drop the final stone with a gasp that echoes off the quarry walls. You can barely straighten. Your legs tremble as you limp back through the cloister gate, sweat drying to a cold crust on your skin. The chants of vespers wrap around you in the chapel, a balm for the shredded edges of your mind. You let them wash over you, let the voices of your brothers carry you, let the silence between the words feel gentle instead of suffocating. In that moment, you almost believe that this life could be holy, that all this sacrifice might matter. Some day to its weary close. You return to the dormitory, collapse on your cot, and breathe through the pounding in your head. Your stomach still gnaws at you, but you ignore it, focusing instead on the faint, comforting rustle of blankets and breath all around you. Before sleep takes you, you allow yourself one thought, a dangerous, unconfessed wish. Let me find meaning in this. Then you close your eyes, too tired even to dream. The dawn bell strikes through the haze of your dreams, snapping you awake with the same blunt force it always carries. Your eyes open to the familiar dimness of the dormitory, the stale chill clinging to every stone, and the rows of silent, half-stirred brothers around you. You move slowly, every joint stiff, the ache of yesterday's quarry labor lodged deep in your shoulders. Your tonsure tingles in the cold, a raw ring that always reminds you where you are and what you've surrendered. You stand, draw the robe around you, and join the slow procession toward the chapel. As you shuffle forward, your thoughts try to slip past the walls you have built in your mind. You wonder what day of the week it is. They blur together here, marked only by saints' feasts and the harsh tempo of bells. It is hard to hold on to the calendar when your life is measured instead by obedience. Lauds begins. The psalms familiar to the point of dull pain. You chant them, voice thin from hunger and fatigue. But the words still root themselves in you. Domen, exaudi, vocem, meum. Lord, hear my voice. You cannot help the small bitter thought that no one hears your voice anymore, except in this borrowed Latin, chanted with dozens of other hollow men. After prayers, the novice master signals you for a new obedience. You will help in the scriptorium again today. A relief, perhaps. No stones, no filthy pigs, but no less exhausting in its own way. You file down the cloister walk to the scriptorium, where the smell of ink and vellum greets you like a thin, stale incense. Your place is the same battered desk near a window that barely keeps the wind out. The glass is smudged with candle soot, letting in only a dull gray morning light. You settle with your tools. A quill trimmed ragged at the tip, a pot of sour-smelling ink, and a sheet of pale parchment. Your task is to copy a genealogy from the Old Testament, line after line of names that blur and twist until you feel you might go mad from the repetition. Brother Ambrose, the scriptorium overseer, passes behind you now and then, checking your work with the same hawk-eyed precision. You feel his gaze even when he says nothing. A mistake means a scraped-out patch of precious parchment, a blotch of shame, and perhaps even penance. Your hands tremble as you shape each letter, praying your lines remain straight. Hours pass in the hush of quills scratching. You lose track of time. Your back knots up. Your neck screams. Your knees go numb from keeping your feet planted on the stone floor. But you keep writing, letting the names tumble through your mind like an endless river. There is a kind of comfort here, twisted though it feels. The vow of silence is easier to bear when your hands are busy, when the words still move through you, even if you cannot speak them. You imagine the names coming to life under your quill, whole generations emerging from the parchment, families lost and remembered again through your own small effort. Historians sometimes argue whether medieval scriptoria were places of peaceful artistry or a kind of word-bound prison. You suspect they were both. Soth. There is peace, yes, but it is a peace that can crush you, make you question if you are anything more than a tool, an obedient hand, a breathing machine for prayer. At midday you eat the same thin broth, a crust of bread so hard you must soak it to bite through. The lector reads about humility, as always, reminding you that the lowly shall be exalted. You try to let the words soothe you, but your stomach still grumbles, a rebellion of the body against the soul's harsh lessons. The afternoon returns you to your desk. The genealogy continues, an ocean of unfamiliar names, impossible to keep straight. You slip once, accidentally copying the wrong name twice, and feel a flush of terror. Brother Ambrose catches it immediately. Lucy, he fixes you with a blank stare, then makes a short, silent gesture. Scrape it clean. Do it again. Your shoulders sag, but you obey. Scraping the parchment feels like scraping your own skin. You think, bitterly, that this place can scrape the heart as easily as the quill scrapes ink. As dusk seeps through the high window, your fingers cramp so badly you can barely hold the quill. A smudge mars the corner of your page, but you leave it, hoping no one notices. You pack away your tools with the others as the bell calls you to vespers. In the chapel, the light has dimmed to blue, candles flaring along the stone pillars. The chants wash over you, and for the first time today, your mind feels light. Maybe this is what the rule intends, to exhaust you so completely that you have no energy left for pride or for fear. Compline ends, and you drift back to the dormitory, legs leaden. You lie down, head pounding, eyes burning, hands still faintly stained with ink, even after washing. You stare at the rafters, listening to the breathing of your brothers. In that silence, a small spark of defiance flares in you. You think, you do not dare speak it, but you think, I am still here. I am still me. And with that fragile scrap of identity, you close your eyes and sleep. You wake before the bell today, eyes snapping open to the dim shape of the rafters overhead, the faint sound of a brother snoring 2 beds away. For a moment, you do not know where you are. Some scrap of a dream clings to you. Warm bread, sunlight on your face, laughter you can still almost hear. And then it's gone, swallowed by the relentless hush of the dormitory. You shift under your thin blanket, cold already biting at your tonsured scalp. The ache in your arms reminds you of yesterday's copying work. The scriptorium's ink and cramped posture, still haunting your joints. You stand, feet meeting stone, the same chill greeting you every day, and move through the motions that have become instinct. Robe tied, cord knotted, sandals pulled on. The bell rings moments later, pulling everyone else up, in perfect, silent choreography. Today, you sense will test you, in a different way. There is talk, through glances, and a few carefully signed gestures, that the abbot plans to question the novices more closely about their temptations. It is, in his words, a matter of guarding souls from rot. You feel your stomach sink at the thought. These examinations leave no part of you hidden, not even the smallest flicker of hope you dare not voice. Lauds arrives, and you kneel with the rest, eyes fixed on the single high window where dawn is beginning to smudge the night away. The psalms roll over you, steady and bone deep, Their Latin syllables, almost a lullaby now, even when they speak of terror and divine wrath. You chant, breathing as evenly as you can, but your mind jitters like a startled bird. After prayers, you are sent not to the scriptorium, nor the garden, nor the kitchen, but to the abbot's presence in the chapter house. The moment you step inside, you feel the cold weight of that vaulted space. Its walls have heard centuries of confessions, judgments, penances. They seem to lean closer as you kneel before the abbot, whose face is carved from stone, as if he never learned how to smile. He does not raise his voice. That would be unseemly. Instead, he speaks in measured, quiet words, forcing you to lean forward to catch them. Has your mind been pure? Have you held to the vow of silence in your heart, not just on your lips? Have you fought the demon of pride? Have you, he asks, harbored doubt? Historians sometimes question if these interrogations were meant for spiritual cleansing or simply a tool to maintain control. As you kneel there, fighting to keep your breath steady, you suspect it is both. You answer truthfully, or as truthfully as you dare. You sign, with shaking hands, that yes, you have had thoughts of the outside, of bread and family, and the world beyond these walls. You try to keep your face empty of emotion, but shame burns in your chest. The abbot nods, unmoved. He assigns you another fast, 3 days of half rations and extra night prayers to break any lingering pride. You bow in acceptance. What else can you do? Refusal is unthinkable. You leave the chapter house feeling hollow, as though something important has been scooped out of you. Your hands tremble. You try to push the worry down. There will be prayers. There will be silence. There will be work. That is how you will survive. Your obedience for the day is in the cloister garden. You kneel in the chilly earth, prying out early weeds between rows of thin chives. The smell of soil is a comfort, oddly enough, reminding you of fields you once worked as a child. The rhythm of pulling and tossing weeds calms you, lets you drift a little inside your mind. Brother Martin works beside you, trimming rosemary, his hands moving deftly. Now and then, he taps your sleeve to correct your technique, showing you how to loosen the roots instead of tearing them. His kindness soothes you, and you cling to it, grateful for a silent teacher who does not use fear. As midday nears, you break briefly for bread and water. Your portion is meager, as promised, but the warmth of the sun on your face while you eat feels like a blessing, all its own. You chew slowly, stretching every bite, letting the thin crust soften on your tongue until you can almost imagine it is the rich bread from your dreams. Then back to the garden, where your knees grow sore and your lower back begins to burn from so much bending. You offer up these aches, the way you have been taught, as a sacrifice, a prayer of the body, rather than the voice. Damen, accipi hoc. Lord, accept this. Vespers comes, and you limp into the chapel, dirt still clinging to your hands despite your best scrubbing. You kneel, bow, rise, kneel again, a pattern so ingrained you could do it in your sleep. The chants feel thin today, your voice barely a thread, but you give what you can. After compline, you return to the dormitory, every part of you tired in a way you can hardly name. The silence is nearly a mercy now, because you could not bear to speak even if you were allowed. You lie down, letting the straw mattress creak under your weight, and stare at the ceiling, tracing the same knot of wood you have studied each night since you arrived. You wonder if there is any part of you the monastery cannot claim. If perhaps, buried somewhere so deep that even the abbot cannot root it out, there is still you. Sleep steals over you in fits, but before it fully takes you, you let the tiniest smile cross your lips, just for an instant, hidden in the dark. Because for one breath, you have remembered you are still human. The dawn bell rolls through the cloister like a tide, steady, unfeeling, absolute. You wake as if yanked out of deep water, blinking up at the timbered ceiling, breathing fast from a dream that evaporates before you can name it. The straw-stuffed cot groans beneath you as you shift, the familiar ache in your knees already throbbing before your feet even touch the cold flagstones. You rise, robed, tonsure prickling in the damp air, and join the silent line shuffling toward the chapel. A glance at your brothers tells you that you are not alone in your exhaustion. Hollow cheeks, cracked lips, shoulders slumped from weeks of meager rations and long penances. You wonder, not for the first time, how many of these men truly chose this life, and how many had nowhere else to go. Lauds begins. You try to focus on the chant, letting the verses slip through you like water. But your mind drifts. Today, the guest house will fill with travelers, pilgrims, merchants, maybe even nobles on the road to some holy shrine. You will see them arrive with the mud of the world on their boots, their voices loud and free. That, more than any sermon, reminds you what you have given up. After prayers, Brother Severin taps your shoulder, then points to the guest house gates. You bow, understanding. It is your day to help receive the pilgrims. A strange relief sparks in your chest, the chance to see new faces, even if you cannot speak. The guest house is a sturdy building near the outer wall, simple but cleaner than the monks' own quarters. You help sweep the long benches, lay out rough woolen blankets, and ready the spare bowls for the midday meal. As you work, you see the first travelers arrive, hunched against a chill wind. A family with 2 children, a group of tired tradesmen, and a single woman with a long staff and weather-beaten sandals. They speak easily, loudly, cheerfully. Their chatter is a shock to your ears, as if you had forgotten how humans sound outside the cloister. You feel their words tug at something inside you, a buried longing, and you have to turn away so they cannot see your expression. Brother Udo, who watches over the guest house, signals you to help carry a child's bundle. The boy clutches a wooden toy carved like a lion, eyes bright despite his exhaustion. You lift the pack, guiding him toward a corner bed. The mother thanks you in a warm musical voice, her words striking like bells through your silence. You nod, hoping your face shows what you cannot say. Historians have long noted how monasteries served as way stations for the world, inns, hospitals, even news centers. In caring for pilgrims, you catch brief flashes of that wider world. Today you glimpse a man with an Italian accent speaking of distant wars, another talking about shipwrecks near Brittany, a woman describing a relic shrine far to the south. The names swirl in your mind, half familiar, half magical. Part of you feels starved for that noise, that color, that messiness. But another part is frightened by it too. After so long in the cloister, you are almost too fragile for the chaos of outside voices. You move carefully among the pilgrims, fetching water, laying extra straw for bedding, keeping your eyes lowered as the novices have been taught. Midday brings a communal meal. You help serve the guests first, as tradition demands, then take your own portion. Smaller, of course, but still warm. You sit apart, tasting stew that seems far richer than usual. You see the pilgrims eat hungrily, laugh, even argue. They have no vow of silence to bind their tongues, no abbot to measure every movement of their souls. A girl barely older than 12 catches your eye and smiles. You look away too quickly, heart rattled in your chest. Such a simple kindness feels dangerous here, where desire, even a flicker of affection, can brand you a sinner. When the meal ends, you clean the bowls, scouring them with gritty sand until your knuckles burn. Brother Udo sets you to mopping the flagstones while the pilgrims rest. You do as you're told. Every gesture precise, careful, obedient. But your mind buzzes with the memory of their voices, their stories, their laughter. It leaves you raw, as if someone had peeled back your skin. Later, Vespers calls you back to the chapel. The candles burn steady as you kneel, the chants flowing over you like a tide. You close your eyes, letting the music wrap you up, trying to soothe the storm the pilgrims left inside you. But that night, lying in the dormitory, the hush feels even harsher after hearing living voices again. You stare at the beams, feeling that itch beneath your ribs, a restless, terrible yearning. You try to bury it in prayer, repeating the familiar Latin until your mouth goes dry, but it will not die. I remember them, you think, with a mix of gratitude and grief. I remember what freedom sounds like. Sleep comes late, pulling you under, only when your mind can no longer hold itself upright. And in your final thoughts before dreams, you promise yourself to hold on to the memory of those voices, however painful it feels, because it reminds you that you are still, impossibly, human. The dawn feels cruel today, slicing through your thin, broken sleep with its bell, a hammer pounding against the hollow of your chest. You wake as if from drowning, gasping for air you cannot quite find. The echoes of the pilgrims still cling to your mind, voices warm and loud, so different from the hush that swallows you now. You push the memory away and stand, your body resisting each motion as if it too wants to stay in those remembered sounds. Your robe feels scratchy against skin that has grown too thin. You rub your tonsure, its raw circle prickling as always, and join the silent river of monks flowing toward the chapel. No one looks at you. No one looks at anyone. You move together, but alone, as if tied by a rope you can neither see nor cut. Lauds begins, the psalms rolling over your tongue without ever truly reaching your heart. You mouth the syllables anyway, breathing them out because you must. Because there is no other path here but obedience. The candlelight glimmers on the stone walls, the same light that has glimmered for centuries, indifferent to your struggle. Today, you are assigned to the kitchen. The work is hot, loud in its own strange way, though no words are spoken. And pots clatter against each other, water hisses in the cauldrons, knives tap a mindless rhythm on thick wooden boards. You chop onions until tears burn your eyes, and you cannot tell whether the sting is from the vegetable or from something deeper, older, breaking loose inside you. Brother Allard, the cook, shows you how to portion out barley, so each measure stays the same, fairness etched into the rule. You watch him, noting how his hands move with a grace born of routine. He signals you to stir a thin pot of lentils, and you do so with a trance-like obedience, letting the spoon circle and circle, as if stirring might calm your own thoughts. You notice, as you work, a crust of dried beans clinging to the iron pot, older than yesterday, maybe older than last week. You scrape it away carefully, finding a tiny sense of victory in that small act of cleaning. In a place where you cannot speak, every action feels louder. After the midday meal, you eat your ration, the same watery broth, the same dry crust of bread, but you are not hungry for food. The guests are gone now, their voices echoing in memory, and you feel emptier for it. You chew and swallow, barely tasting anything, eyes fixed on a crack in the refectory floor, where a weed has somehow pushed through. You almost envy it. Historians sometimes debate whether monks truly found these kitchen tasks comforting, or if they were simply distractions from the slow grind of the rule. Today, you suspect it is both. Work gives your hands something to do when your mind would otherwise collapse in on itself. The afternoon brings more orders. Polishing the iron spits, scrubbing wooden spoons, fetching buckets from the well. You haul water until your arms tremble. The yoke across your shoulders, biting like a punishment. You pause by the courtyard fountain, watching the sky reflected in the rippling pool. Clouds drift across the water. Untroubled, wordless. For one moment, you wish you could be as free as a cloud. Brother Allard gestures for you to bring in more firewood. You obey, though your knees complain with every step. In the wood store, the scent of resin hits you, sharp, almost sweet. And for a moment it reminds you of old forests, of running through leaf mold, of childish games you have nearly forgotten. You close your eyes and let that memory warm you, if only for a heartbeat. When Vespers comes, you kneel with the others, arms still shaking from carrying buckets and wood. The chant rises around you, the same familiar tide, and tonight you nearly drown in it. The words do not comfort you as they once did. They feel like bars around your mind. But you keep singing, because that is the only thing you can do, because to stop is unthinkable. After Compline, you stumble to your cot, breath ragged, body scraped, hollow by work and silence. You lie on your back, watching the shadows dance along the beams, and think about those travelers again, how they laughed, how they argued, how their words seemed to stitch them together in ways you have almost forgotten. A tiny voice inside you whispers, "I miss them." You flinch from the thought. Such yearning is dangerous, and you know it. But you cannot kill it, no matter how many psalms you repeat. Before sleep takes you, you clutch at one final prayer, unspoken, hidden in the cracks of your heart. Let me remember there is a world beyond these walls. Then you let go, sinking into the dark, where at least no one can question your longing. The bell comes before the dawn, once again, steady and pitiless, a sound that feels older than the walls themselves. You open your eyes, bleary and unfocused, your body resisting the movement of rising. Your mind tries to cling to a dream you barely remember, something about your mother's voice calling you in from a sunlit field. But the memory slips away, drowned by the stone and chill of the dormitory. You rise. You always rise. The rule leaves you no choice. Your hands fumble at the knot of your belt. Your tonsure prickles in the raw air, and you join the silent tide of monks flowing out to the chapel. The shuffle of sandals on worn flagstones, the hush of woolen robes brushing against one another, feels like the only song you will ever know. Lauds begins, the same psalms, the same chant. Your voice scrapes across your throat, raw from days of fasting and night vigils, but you keep singing. To stop would be unthinkable, and even if you could, you would not dare. In these walls, even the smallest rebellion is crushed. After prayers, you are given your day's obedience to assist in the infirmary. The news pulls a strange relief from you. There is something about tending to the sick that feels more human than the endless copying of psalms or the back-breaking fields. You follow Brother Lucas through the cloister, the hush broken only by the cry of crows beyond the high wall. The infirmary is warm compared to the rest of the monastery, though heavy with the sharp smell of vinegar and stale herbs. Beds line the walls, straw mattresses holding men in every state of suffering. Coughs, sores, broken bones, fevers. You pause for a moment, breathing in the sadness, then move to your work. Brother Lucas gives you a sign. Wash the feet of those who cannot stand. You nod and fetch the basin, the water still holding a ghost of last night's heat. One by one, you kneel, cradle a stranger's foot, scrub away the dirt of illness and weakness. The water grows cloudy, and you change it again and again, hands wrinkling and pink from the work. At first, The men barely meet your eyes. They are used to being ignored. You sense. But as you work gently, as you rinse and dry their battered feet, something changes. A few smile, just faintly, their lips trembling with gratitude they cannot voice. One man, too weak to sit up, reaches to squeeze your shoulder in silent thanks. That small contact burns like sunlight after a long night. You catch Brother Lucas watching you. He gives the smallest of nods, a silent approval, rarer than gold in this place. You bow your head, humbled, but a spark of something warmer than pride lights inside you. Historians sometimes argue whether medieval infirmaries were truly about healing, or simply easing souls on their way to God. You see both here. Some men recover, fed broth and prayers, treated with herbs and a quiet touch. Others slip into a final sleep, their last breath leaving in the silence of candlelight. There is a peace in that too, though it frightens you. At midday, you are granted a ration, a crust of barley bread, a ladle of thin onion broth, barely enough to settle the gnawing in your belly. You eat quickly, then return to the infirmary, without a word. Work is the closest thing you have to mercy in these hours. Brother Lucas teaches you how to mix a honey and thyme paste for a wound. He shows you how to wind a linen bandage tight enough to hold, but not to cut. You marvel at his patience, and somewhere, through that quiet teaching, you sense that God might live more fully in these small acts than in all the endless chanting. As dusk falls, you help straighten the beds, smoothing straw, shifting thin blankets over hollow bodies. One old pilgrim, half delirious with fever, mumbles something about his daughter, reaching blindly into the air. You catch his hand, hold it gently, and let him believe you are family. It feels like the kindest lie you have ever told. The bell calls you to vespers, tearing you from the work. You rise reluctantly, leaving Brother Lucas to finish alone, and shuffle back through the cold cloister halls. The evening chant feels different tonight, softer around the edges, as though the kindness of the infirmary clings to you still. After compline, you return to the dormitory, easing onto your cot with a sigh you cannot voice. Your hands smell of thyme and vinegar, a cleaner scent than ink or sweat or pig dung, and you hold them to your nose, breathing it in, as if to keep the memory. Lying there in the darkness, you wonder if God counts your quiet mercy among your prayers, if scrubbing feet and soothing wounds weighs as much in heaven as a perfect psalm. You hope so. Before sleep takes you, you let yourself imagine that one day, if you leave these walls, you might heal people in the wider world, not just their bodies, but their hearts. It is a dangerous dream, but tonight, it feels warm enough to risk. The bell arrives before any light touches the sky, ringing out into the cold dormitory and dragging you from sleep, as if hooked by the spine. Your bones protest, brittle and heavy, your throat raw from last night's psalms. Still you rise, because there is no alternative, and pull the rough robe around shoulders that feel as thin as prayer itself. This is the last day of your penance cycle. The final day of 3, on half rations, extra night vigils, and endless obediences. You can hardly remember what it feels like to be warm or satisfied, but a small voice inside reminds you that enduring is its own kind of triumph. You stand with the others, lined up in the pre-dawn hush, each man an echo of the next. Together, you walk to the chapel. Solids begins. The candles throw a flickering glow that trembles on the high arches. You chant the psalms, words clinging to your tongue like dry straw, but you push them forward because the rule demands it, and you have no voice left to protest. After prayers, the novice master taps your shoulder and signals your obedience. You are to help in the guest house again. For a heartbeat, your heart lifts. The guest house means contact with travelers, glimpses of that wide world you dream about in your silent hours. Even if you cannot speak to them, you can watch. And remember, the morning is busy. The fresh group of pilgrims arrives, dusty, footsore, but carrying an energy that makes your chest ache. You help gather their packs, usher them to benches, pour water into their cups. A woman with a braid coiled like a crown thanks you with warm eyes, and you lower your gaze quickly, afraid of how such a simple kindness might burn through your thin self-control. You see a small boy, his shoes tied with fraying twine, clinging to a carved wooden donkey. When you kneel to help him set his things on a bed of straw, he looks at you without fear, smiling shyly. Something in your chest tightens, a longing so sharp it almost steals your breath. You wonder if he knows how free he is, to laugh, to chatter, to sing if he wishes. Brother Udo sets you to fetching extra bread from the storehouse, and you obey, shoulders already aching. As you pass through the courtyard, you catch a gust of warm air drifting through the half-open gate, carrying scents of road dust and pine. It hits you so hard, you nearly stumble. You realize, in that instant, that you are still you, not only monk, not only silent shadow, but a living person who once loved the smell of rain and bread and spring blossoms. After midday, you eat what little you are allowed, and for a moment you feel almost grateful. Almost. Then the hunger returns, gnawing, and you fold it away under the layers of obedience that have become your second skin. The afternoon is spent scrubbing the guest house floors, smoothing out the straw, mending a broken bench. Your hands move by habit now, as if they belong more to the monastery than to you. And yet your mind will not stay still. You hear the pilgrims talking, voices full of worries, dreams, small jokes, and you realize with a pang that you miss even their troubles. Anything feels more human than this endless quiet. Historians often puzzle over how a monk survived decades of such repetition without going mad. Standing there with your bucket and rag, you feel the answer: you do go mad, in small ways, then come back to yourself again, then lose yourself once more. The silence is a tide that never fully recedes. Vespers comes, and you bow and chant, your voice quavering, but still there. You wonder if the novices beside you feel the same small, ragged pride, that no matter how hollow they have become, they still stand, still kneel, still answer. After compline, you return to the dormitory, knees aching, shoulders tight, eyes grainy with exhaustion. You lower yourself onto the straw-stuffed cot, feeling every splinter in the boards beneath. Tonight, you know, marks the close of your punishment. Tomorrow the portions will return to normal, thin gruel, but still enough. And perhaps the abbot will relent in the night watches. As you lie staring at the beams, you let yourself think dangerous thoughts. You think of bread, yes, but also of laughter, of conversation, of running barefoot through a meadow. You think of a world where your words are your own, and though you know the rule would scold you, you let those thoughts bloom anyway, because they are yours, because they remind you that the monk the monastery is trying to shape is not the only thing living in your skin. Sleep begins to steal you away, slow and gentle, and before you slip under, you feel a warmth in your chest, a fragile ember that refuses to die. You cradle it carefully, this tiny rebellion of hope, and let it carry you into the dark. You breathe more slowly now, letting the images of stone walls and flickering candles soften. Picture the quiet of the cloister, but without its burden. Imagine its peace without its chains. Let the hush become restful, rather than cruel. Let the long shadows stretch not to confine you, but to shield you in safety. You are no longer pressed to wake for prayer, no longer bound to kneel on cold stones. Feel the weight of your robes slip away. You are lighter, calmer, free to dream. Beyond the monastery, the world stretches wide, waiting patiently. Meadows roll with summer grass. Markets murmur with voices. Children run laughing among wildflowers. You may choose to join them, or rest here, wrapped in soft air and warm, gentle night. No bells will wake you. No master will command you. Just the steady, soothing rhythm of your own breath, in and out, easy, unhurried. So let your shoulders drop. Feel your jaw unclench. Let your thoughts grow slower, as though the world itself is singing you to sleep. You are safe. You are whole. You are free to rest. Sleep well and sweet dreams.